Live and direct, we come and never pre-recorded, with information that will never be reported. Disregard the mainstream, media distorted. We come and listen and support it.
Hey, what's up, beautiful people? This is Zach Sweat with Eternal Strength. Thank you so much for tuning in to Eternal Strength Pirate Radio, and please be sure to check back each week as new episodes will be released.
It is official. I am here with Rohini Ross, who I have not talked to in ages. We just both determined. And Rohini, I want to start by saying thank you. I think we've been talking back and forth for a long time about you coming on Eternal Strength podcast, and then recently a radio station that's been around since the 70s called WRFG in Atlanta asked me to be a co-host, so I may put this episode in there as well, but they're awesome.
Wow.
But I want to thank you for being here.
Oh, well, thank you for having me, and I'm so glad we finally got to be at the same time, even if it's on Zoom. Not the same place, but at least the same time, be able to speak.
And look, we're used to working virtually, right?
That's true. We are
that's
now.
what we did back in the day. Because, but here, I want to give you a quick intro, if you don't mind.
Okay, go ahead.
So I'm going to do mine a little bit different. You are a licensed clinician. I've been practicing psychotherapy, counseling in numerous settings throughout your career. But what I view you as, and what I remember, is you are a warm soul, an empath, a compassionate healer. And in my earliest days growing up, cutting my teeth in psychotherapy, learning who I was, finding my voice, you had words of wisdom that I carried like a backpack as I did work with these families and youth. And Rohini, the one that I use the most is, and I don't even know if you told me it might have been Willow relaying it to me, but it was everyone has control over one thing, and that is their window of stress tolerance. And you described it so beautifully, and it was this idea that we each as individual human beings and souls have a window of stress tolerance. And for me, mine is if I've eaten, slept well, worked out, meditated, really taken time to ground myself in my cognitive thoughts, in my narrative, my kids are doing well, I'm on top of tasks that I put in front of myself that I wanted to get done, then there's this huge window, and my ability to tolerate stress is pretty gigantic. However, I haven't eaten, I haven't meditated, I haven't worked out, I haven't done, then there's this like sliver. And as I go out into the world and I interact, it could be somebody who's just like, hey, cool tattoos, man. And I'm like, you motherfucker. It just immediate trigger. And so I can't even tell you, Rohini, how many times I've used that in family sessions with clients, young adults. And it's been this beautiful kernel and nugget of wisdom that came from you amongst many other things. But I'm just grateful to be here with you, and we're going to keep it super organic. So I'd love for you to dive in, give a little bit of an intro, maybe your earliest days getting into the field of mental health counseling, psychotherapy, and then where you've taken that journey and the beautiful and incredible work that you and your husband are doing as the Rewilders on providing sacred space for couples and families. But man, it seems like this beautiful flowering of just evolutionary growth work for intimacy, couples, marriages, communication. And I watch everything you guys do on Instagram, and you're always just dropping knowledge, and it's humble and there's no ego. And I'm like, damn, they're crushing it. This is amazing. So now I'll shut up and I'll let you talk, but I'm just grateful that you're here.
Thank you, Wes. Thank you for such a heartfelt, beautiful introduction. Gosh, I don't even know how I can follow up with that introduction. So I'll just start with answering the question in terms of how I got into this work and the trajectory that I've been on, which has been an amazing learning and growth opportunity. And I think that's why I love doing this work so much, is because we are forced to grow as human beings in this work. And it's really us walking alongside our clients, each being open to seeing truth more deeply, healing whatever is available to be healed at this point in time. So I really see myself as a guide in the process and not as an expert. And it's interesting. I mean, I can go way, way back, but I won't stay there very long. But when I was growing up, I always thought I was going to be a doctor. And I went to university. I was taking all of the pre-med classes, and I could not figure out calculus or organic chemistry. It was just like, I don't know. I thought I was pretty smart. I had always been
organic chemistry is the one that I hear countless people talk about how difficult, and then it's the notorious in the movie Good Will Hunting. When
yes.
She's like, you do organic chemistry for fun. And he's like, to me, it's like playing the piano. Just
exactly. How sexy is that? Yeah, not so much for me. So I started to unravel because I realized that, wow, this heartfelt dream that I'd had all my life was not really feeling possible given the bandwidth I had at that time. I think if I had had a bigger window of stress tolerance, if I had been more grounded, I might have been able to do it. But the navigation of second year college, having a boyfriend, trying to figure out school and social life, I was overwhelmed. And so I started to unravel. And so I went to see an academic counselor, and they just really encouraged me to focus on what I really enjoyed. And so I ended up doing something completely different, studying human geography. I then went on to do my master's in cultural geography. And so I went down this whole other path that really helped me understand more about the social connections between people, how we work as groups, and the impact of historical events on our groups, and how culture is impacted by meeting another culture, how it gets impacted by disease. So it was really interesting. And I thought, oh, well, now I'm going to become get a PhD and do this and become a professor. Right. And then as I started to get through my master's degree, which I did really enjoy, I realized that I can't just read books and write papers. Like, that is not going to be the life that I can do. So then I'm like, I guess I'm going to take a little break. And at that point in time, I had been dealing with my own mental health challenges ever since I started to unravel in my second year of university. I really came up against depression and anxiety. So I started to do my own therapy. I was also up against some health challenges when I did my research for my master's. I did it in Guatemala, and I got parasites, and the Western medical model only took me so far. So I started meditation and yoga and changing diet, and all kinds of new things opened up for me, which was pretty amazing. And so as part of that, I reconnected with my father, who I hadn't been in contact with since I was 2.5. Wow. And my mother had never really talked to me about him. I never really understood what happened. And I just knew that it was very painful between the two of them, and it was something not to be talked about. And so as part of that healing journey, I decided to seek out my father and connect with him. And I knew that he was living in England. And so I planned on moving to England after I finished my master's. It just so happened that I met Angus in the spring before I was due to move to London. So Angus is my husband, and he lived in London. He's English, and he just happened to be in Canada. And so we met and connected, and that was all felt very fortuitous as part of my journey to England. I already had a boyfriend when I got there. It was kind of timely. And so that sort of started that exploration. And I had a job working in a Guatemalan textile museum as part of my master's research. I connected with someone who did that very niche work. And it turned out I was allergic to the textiles.
What?
So I was getting these rashes and headaches.
Every single one of them?
It wasn't the textile, sorry. It was the preservative, because these are ancient textiles. There's a preservative that's used on them to just keep them from, decaying.
But
and so the chemicals.
One small, like, only the blue textiles in the corner.
No, like they used it on everything.
Oh.
So anyway, I just started not feeling well, getting headaches. I'm sensitive in that way.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, I can't keep working in this place. It's making me sick. What am I going to do?
Yeah.
So it turns out that Angus, my boyfriend at the time, now my husband, was a fashion photographer. And he said, well, why don't you just try some modeling? Maybe that's something that you can do while you're figuring out what you want to do with your life. Because at that point, I wasn't sure what I was going to do.
Happen? Was he just like, oh, by the way, I don't know if anybody's ever told you, but you're stunning and gorgeous. You could try modeling.
But once you got to understand, I was old at that point in time for what would be considered starting out a modeling career. So I am probably ancient at 25 at this point in time. People aren't starting modeling at 25.
Right.
But anyway, so he introduced me to someone, and yes, they did take me on. And then he was really freaked out because I got taken on by an agency in London, and they just happened to have an Italian agency visiting. And so they asked me to come to Italy and try out for the shows. I can't even remember what it's called, the Fashion Week in Italy. And so I went, and I ended up booking like months of work with Giorgio Armani. And it's like, wow, that happened really fast. But Angus thought he was never going to see me again. He thought he'd lost me, and that was it.
He was like,
but anyway, so I had this spell of modeling for a few years, and I did end up meeting my father during that time. So it was all very healing, and I was very much, on this journey of self-exploration for me, and just, it was definitely, my 20s were definitely a challenging time mental health wise. Angus talks about me just sobbing on the bed in London, and him being at wit's end, not understanding like what was going on, why I was so unhappy, why he couldn't stop me from being unhappy, why every time he made an attempt for me to not be unhappy, I'd get mad at him for whatever he was doing. Right. So I could have lots of mental health diagnoses these days, but I didn't really go that route at that time. But for me, I see it as something that was part of my learning curve in terms of how to be with the full range of human emotional experience, and how to find my center and inner stability with the storms that happen for all of us on the emotional level. And so it wasn't a very graceful learning time, but I now I'm grateful that I have that experience, because I can absolutely relate to many people that struggle with all kinds of different mental health issues.
And Rohini,
and so,
hey, I'll just jump in real quick and say, like, how you just conceptualize that is, in my opinion, one of the most beautiful and truthful ways that you can understand the holistic human journey. And so, like, I went through my own struggles 17 to 23, and the amount of DSM diagnoses that I would have met criteria for a formal diagnosis, and the pathology and diagnostic system, and how they would have seen my behavior and my emotions and the display, could have spiraled me into a place where that would have become my identity. And look at your life as a journey, and your heart and your soul was doing something was going on internally for you, in an existential and a meta level, in your experience in the world, in reflection on who you were as a little girl, and meeting your father, and what your world was going to be. And all of that, when looked at as a journey, can be the growth-oriented space of turmoil that burst you open into understanding yourself holistically and how you need to pursue your life. It's beautiful.
Yeah, I love how you're sort of really highlighting that, because I think so many people can personalize and really identify with labels, which are useful and helpful for describing behavior, but they're not who we are, and they are never who we are.
Yeah.
And to be able to live in alignment with the truth of who we are, and to be with the unfolding of the healing in whatever form, shape, flavor, length of time that takes. And I know that you work with a lot of youth, and I think that so many youth really are on a very steep learning curve of being able to be with all of themselves, all of their thoughts, all of their feelings. It's a very intense time. And to one, understand it's not always going to be that intense. The brain is still developing at that point. The emotional regulation is often much more intense at that time in life than it is later on in life. And so I just really hope that people can hear how it's all healthy and it's all normal.
Absolutely.
And there isn't anything wrong with you, no matter what you're experiencing. All emotions are healthy, all experience is healthy. And we may or may not have very healthy coping mechanisms, is how we deal with our human experience.
Right.
But the more that we see our wholeness and can feel safe within ourselves, the less likely we are to need unhealthy coping mechanisms that have their own challenges and issues that go along with them.
Man,
So
I want to do what the reggae DJs do when they like reggae performers they'll do a little part of the song and then they'll be like, run that back, and then come back with it. But then, like what you just said, the dissipation of unhealthy coping mechanisms begins to reduce the more you accept yourself fully and see your beauty and your truth. And man, that is like, to look at the world and to see human beings and the negativity that they engage in is just an indicator of an inability to accept one's emotions fully and allow it to move through you, and beautifully articulated.
Yeah, like, and so often what happens is people focus on the behavior, which can be really scary. I get that. But when we focus on the behavior, we tend to get even more caught up in self-judgment and feeling less than and not good enough. And because we can't seem to have enough willpower to change the behavior, like willpower works for, a couple of weeks if we're really lucky. If I have terrible willpower, but it's like that willpower is not where real sustainable change comes from.
Yeah.
And so when we're looking at the behavior, we get down this path of thinking we need to be stronger, better, that there's something wrong with us, that we have this behavior, when really it's absolutely aligned. Like, it makes complete sense that to whatever the behavior is, with the understanding that we have. Yeah. And so if we sort of not focus on the behavior, but really look at what's the understanding that we have within ourselves, what are those truths that we're not really seeing? And I'm not even talking about focusing on the content of all of our limiting beliefs. Like, we all have insecure thoughts, we all have limiting beliefs, we all have misunderstandings in consciousness. If we focus on them, they'll just get magnified. Right. But what if we just accept that that's part of the human experience? And as you're saying, look to the truth of who we are, look to the essence that is love, that is peace, that is well-being, that is beautiful, that is heartfelt, that is compassionate, that is all of those qualities. And that is never damaged in anyone.
Yeah.
That is never diminished. We may not be experiencing it, but that does not mean that it's damaged or diminished. It just means that we've got too much thinking in the way of being able to really experience the truth of who we are. Beautiful. And so so by reminding people, which is often counter to what they've been told in other places, by reminding people to come back to what they know within themselves, because we all have common sense. We all have that knowing within ourselves. We may not listen to it all the time, but we have it. Yeah. And so by helping people come back to what they know to be true within themselves and have that expand, that's where the healing comes from, as far as I'm concerned. Man. And for me, I was all about focusing on the behaviors. Like, there's something wrong with me that I'm crying all the time. Angus clearly thinks there's something wrong with me, that I'm not okay. And then getting caught up in all of the insecure thinking. And so I went on this massive sort of self-improvement binge in terms of thinking that has to be the answer. If I could just improve myself, then I'll be good enough. And then I won't hurt so much. Like, I had it so mixed up. Yeah. And I really pathologized the human experience. And unfortunately, the therapists that I saw at the time were sort of all on board with, yeah, like, let's really look at all of the negative things in your life, and let's really go there, or let's really look at how you can manage your thinking. And I just couldn't get it right. And so, of course, I thought, well, that must be me. I must just not be good enough. I must have to work even harder.
Yeah.
And that obviously made me cry even more, right? It's not going to make me happier to feel that way.
It's the guilt and the shame cycle begin.
Yeah.
But man, as you were talking, Rohini, like there's this beautiful, and I'll put it up, and I think it's Jeff Foster, is I think his name.
Oh, I love Jeff Foster.
He's got this one where he says, and I'm going to butcher it, but he says, you do not heal from trauma, and nobody heals you either. You simply reconnect with the love and the light that you have always had, and you go back to that. So as you were talking, that started to show up, and then that old school Enya song, Return to Innocence. Ay, ay, ay. Like you were talking, and that glow and that light was coming, and it's like, I just, I get so frustrated with modern day Western psychology, because it's still at the root always looking at the deficit and the pathology of the individual.
Yeah.
And I'm grateful that it's progressing and growing, and that psychotherapists like yourself who have embarked and been in the field and done work are stretching the edges of it to see the human experience in a new way. And so what you said was absolutely, so go back. So walk me through. So you're doing
so anyway, this is taking way longer than I planned.
This is awesome. This is amazing.
So as part of that, I had to do my best. And I'm so grateful, because as much as Angus was not, he wasn't into psychology, he was very much into positive thinking at that time. So that would drive me crazy, because it felt very invalidating from my emotional experience. But there was a truth behind it. Like, he knew that I was lovable at my core, and he saw me beyond all of that in a way that I hadn't really been experienced being seen that way. And so I was very, very fortunate that our relationship, as volatile as it was, as challenging as it could be at times, that there was something that I knew he could see, and I knew he had within himself, that I wanted to know more about. And he just had a deeper connection of that space within himself than I had experienced within myself.
Yeah.
And I was drawn to that. And I knew that it was helpful. And it was very healing, because there was a foundation where it didn't feel like the bottom was falling out of my life, because there was a foundation there. And I don't want to put the power in him, but I think in life, we all benefit from support. I agree with everything that you said about the Jeff Foster quote and understanding that it's within, and I absolutely point to that. But sometimes it's really helpful when we have others in our life that can remind us that it's within ourselves, and that we aren't having to do the journey alone. And that person might be a friend, it might be a pastor, it might be a coach, it might be a therapist. Like, we don't know who it has to be. There's no sort of title that you have to be able to do that for somebody. And I think being able to see someone's wholeness and to recognize the truth in that has a profound impact on them, because it helps them to remember and to recognize that even just the possibility, to consider the possibility that you're whole when you're not feeling whole, is really powerful. Yeah. And so I'm incredibly grateful for the support that Angus gave me during that time, and that he didn't leave me, and that, we managed to, we're still married now. So it's been quite a while. It's been nearly 27 years now that we're married. So that journey, and we can be on that journey at any age in life. I think that teenage years and young adulthood are particularly challenging for all human beings for the most part, but we can come up against this at any point in our life. And when we can really see that those darkest moments really are the times when we're coming up against the misunderstandings in our own consciousness, and that they're the moments that allow us to step further into the light, and that they're the growing pains, and that it's through being with those experiences that we, as you said, become more whole within ourselves, that we, in what Jung would talk about in terms of the shadow work, we integrate these parts of ourselves that we decided were unworthy and unlovable. And often when we see them, we still think that. We don't say, oh, that's wonderful.
Right.
We feel that way. But in the experiential knowing of being with, there's the opportunity to integrate and to realize that every aspect of ourselves is part of our wholeness. And that's why we use the metaphor of rewilding, because in nature can be rewilded back to its natural state, and every part of nature is relevant to that process. And so for Angus and I, we love to use that metaphor for how, as humans, our natural state is love. And we can be rewilded back to that natural state of love through the integration of our wholeness, through seeing all aspects of ourselves as valuable on that journey, and being able to be with the range of it.
Rohini, you're like, I think about, gosh, you make me think so much. I think about your journey of Vive. I think about the years that you did work as a parent coach.
Mm-hmm.
I think that was a system that we were in. You know, I love Dave and I love Willow and everything, but I think it was challenging, the family systems that we worked with. And I see how you've grown in terms of that light being within you, you doing your own growth work, and now you and Angus doing rewilding. And it's really radically transformative, the journey that you are trying to take people on. And it's not for the faint of heart. And it's for those that are ready to say, I am willing to take ownership of my life and go on the journey that I need to reconnect with myself holistically. And you make the ecological analogy, and I love Ram Dass. He's just like, he's it, man. I'm like, come on. He was beautiful, but there's this one where he's sitting there and he's got his smaller beard and he's in a suit and he's being interviewed, and he says, you know, I've come to understand that I think the best you can do is treat yourself as an ecological environment that you take care of, and you create a space in your presence and your frequency and who you are to allow others that, if they are ready, can grow and expand their own ecological environment in that welcoming space.
Oh,
and you're just beautiful. Like it, and it is, and it comes back to what you have control over, and us each having control over our window of stress tolerance, our own mini ecology, but the power of how that can influence and impact another, and the power we have as social creatures in community with one another. All it takes is for somebody to tell you and give you permission and see your light and say, you've had this all along.
Yes.
You are okay, and you're not broken, and you're not ill, and you're not diseased, and you can heal. And here's what it can look like. And the best way to do that is to do that to yourself in your own capacity to the best of your ability, and then offer that space to others. And I think, man, I'm really, really grateful for the work that you and Angus are doing. And I know, I can tell when people are on social media to just do social media. And then I can tell when people are on where they're like, I got to get this light out to the world. And regardless of where it lands or what it does, we're on this journey and speaking this because people need to hear it. And they need these spaces, and you guys shine bright all day on there. And watching you guys talk is awesome. It's beautiful.
Thank you. But yeah, that's a huge difference. And I do have that intention that it's like, how can we get creative about reminding people about who they are, and that they are whole, and that they're not broken, just like you said. And it's like, why not have some fun with social media on that? Anyway.
Absolutely. Do you guys have a TikTok yet? You got to get on TikTok.
I know. Our daughters tell us that.
Well,
one step at a time, Wes. One step at a time.
Yes. I'm like, come on, you got to buy land in the metaverse. What are you doing?
The metaverse. That's funny.
But
yeah. So let me jump ahead. So
yeah.
I'm on this journey. Things on a personal level get more stable. We end up moving to the U.S. Because of the work that we were doing at the time, and then I came across this program that was a master's in spiritual psychology. And so throughout all this period, I'm thinking I'm going to become an acupuncturist. Like, I wasn't sure what I was going to do, and then I saw that, and I thought, oh, that's what I want to do. And so that was the program that allowed me to get the counseling psychology degree, to get my license. And shortly after that is when we would have met, because it wasn't long after I had been licensed that I started working at Vive, where we worked with families, with young adults that were struggling. And that was really where I earned my stripes as a therapist. I jumped in at the deep end, I think is what you could say. But what I love is that there's a through line that's always been there. You know, from those very early days, the core philosophy of Vive was that people were whole, and that even though life gets really scary and life gets really intense and difficult things happen and people don't always live, like life is real, but that it's always through coming back to the love in our hearts that will allow us to be guided with whatever comes our way.
Yeah.
And those are probably some of the most intense, harrowing experiences of my life in terms of being with families in situations that are confronting death and loss and scary situations with their children. And now, as a mother of young adults, I have even more empathy and understanding of how difficult it is to see the light at times in our children, in youth, when they're struggling. But that is the time when we need to see it the most. That is the time when they need us to see it and to recognize that everything that they're displaying is part of their wisdom trying to guide them and figure things out, and that they're doing the best that they can with that. But if we really hold that focus on what's really going on, we can see that their wisdom is speaking to them and they're functioning in the best way that they can based on the suffering that they have.
Absolutely.
And that when we address the suffering, the behavior shifts.
Yeah. Man, Rohini, why do we make it so hard? Why do we, you know, like as you were talking, I was just like, it's love. Fuck.
Yeah.
It's love. Like, and it's so hard, and I'll cry like thinking about it, but like all these hula hoops or rings that we jump through, and these gymnastics that we do psychologically and emotionally, and task-based existence in society, and it's love that heals. And it's when somebody can love you amongst and beyond your behaviors and beyond your pain and your suffering, and the love can still shine through. That's when you feel safe enough to show yourself to somebody. And I think about it, I just think about all the ways that our culture makes it difficult for us, or doesn't value that as much as it should be, when it is the root that connects us all. Yeah,
it's easy to let fear take over at times, and it feels very urgent, and it can be like, oh my goodness, you know, my kid's not going to get into the right college, or, you know, whatever the urgency might be, and that can just look like that's more of a priority. But love never has that feeling on it. It's in the now, it's peaceful, it's real, and that's the only thing that's true. Everything else is the stories that we make up, and they can be very compelling, and I certainly get gripped by my stories. I'm still very human, but I get better and better at recognizing what to come back to and to leave all of that alone, because it just takes me down a path of suffering every single time, you know, just only every single time. We're just very slow learners, I think.
You're like, I'll walk
Every
this
time.
path again. Yeah, this path is comfortable. I've walked this trail. And then you're like, son of a, like Rohini, it's beautiful. A personal moment that I hope you don't mind me sharing, and I'll just kind of like brushstroke it. But I remember, because Vive is where I cut my teeth too, and I was learning so much. And you're right, man. Dave and Willow at the core of everything. I felt that person-centered, humanistic. You are whole, and then I felt a lot of creativity with how you do your work and your voice. But I remember you got on a call with us, and you were exiting out, and you were leaving, and the way you spoke to it was one of the most empowering, holistically healthy. Modeling. You were like, look, I'm a mom. My family's going through some challenges. My daughters are growing up. It's not easy. This is too much of a mirror on a daily with the work that I'm doing. I had to do a lot of soul searching, and I have to move in this direction right now so that I can pour my energy into myself and my family and what we're doing. And it was just this profound moment of you modeling what it really means to be holistically healthy. And I carry that moment in my heart because I think about my daughters who were 9 and 6. And I think about the work that I do and building the center. I'm already like playing out super neurotic, like projected fights where like my 16-year-old daughters are like, you love the kids at Eternal Strength more than you love us. They haven't even said anything. And I'm like having these long, but I think it was another beautiful moment of demonstrating walking towards love and not letting fear lead and going on the journey that you needed to. And I just want you to know it profoundly impacted me and resonated deeply. And so, yeah.
Thank you for reminding me of that, because as you were saying that, I was flashing back to, because that was when our eldest daughter went to public high school. Okay. And it was quite a ride for a couple of years. And so you're absolutely right. I knew it was really clear that I just needed to have more space so that I could show up for the family in a different way, because it was needed. Yeah. And it was so beautiful to be able to have to walk the path that I have been asking parents to walk, right? Yeah. And to see how strong the pull is to go toward control and try and see if that would work as in the parenting role, and to see how the more control got applied, the worse the behavior would get.
Absolutely.
Only every time as well, right? And to see like, and that's why it's about the inner work, because the only thing that would have Angus and I move towards control is fear. And from a place of fear, it looks like that's the only thing that's on offer. But really, we know that relationship is the only thing that matters. And that it was through trust and being in true relationship with her that she found her way. And I mean, the pivot that she made was so beautiful when we finally decided that we were going to trust her wisdom. Yeah. And see where it took her, because it's her life. Yeah. And so, but man, it's easier said than done, but Well, so you got two that you're going to have to learn the experiential way as well.
Yes. Tell me about it, man. The journey is ahead of me, and hopefully I just, I know I have resources to reach out to.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, Rohini, here's what I want to say. I would stay on this podcast with you like forever. Can we please do another one?
I'd love to.
I'd love to have Angus on.
Yeah.
I think that would be amazing to talk to you both. I think it would be really cool if my wife Allison could join us, and it would be
would be great.
Allison and I talking to you guys
about
relationship and love and intimacy and growth and marriage. But if people want to get a hold of you guys right now, they can find you on Instagram. And what is your Instagram tag? It's
The Rewilders.
The Rewilders. Okay. Yeah. And then are you guys doing in terms of your work? Are you working in, what are you guys providing right now in terms of support?
So what we do is we offer private one-on-one couples retreats And so we work with couples in that way. We also have an online community, which is it's the Rewilders community, where it doesn't have to be relationship focused. It could be for anybody that wants to be with others looking in the direction of being rewilded in any area of life and connecting more deeply with that true nature within. So those are the main ways that we work with people currently.
And so that could be an individual, just somebody that wants to work on this.
Yeah, it isn't just relationship focused.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah.
I would just like to announce that I am not going to work with anybody on their intimate relationships. That's the one arena that I don't do as a therapist. I'll do the family system, I'll do individual, the couple stuff I'm going to leave to Rohini.
There you go. I'm happy to jump in.
Rohini.
Yeah, it's fun doing it with Angus. So
awesome, man. I know this is short. I'm going to hop off so I can go to Magic Music Rooms, our fun
yes
community event. And then thank you beyond whatever. My words fail me because I just reconnect more. And I feel like from our conversation today, there will be numerous more rich, complex conversations.
Oh, I look forward to it. Thank you so much for having me.
Awesome.
Hey y'all, this is Wes. Thank you so much for tuning in to Eternal Strength Pirate Radio. Head on over to eternalstrengthatl.com. And don't forget to check out cosmiclamb.org, our 501c3 nonprofit, where you can make a donation and help us fulfill the mission of bringing radical youth work to any and all families in need.